Our next guest is running for Congress in Virginia. Now, of course, we saw some high-impact victories for the Democratic Party last month in Virginia. Can they keep that up? What is the fate of progressive politics in that part of the world? Perhaps our next guest has some insights for us on that. Justin Santopietro is running in Virginia's 9th Congressional District, and he joins us now. First of all, Justin, thanks for coming on the program.
No, thanks so much for having me. I'm really excited to be here.
Well, we're glad to have you. And just so that our listeners and viewers understand, so you are from that district, is that correct? But you worked in Washington for a while?
Exactly. Yes, I was born and raised right in this district. I decided after high school to go to Washington to study politics and government. And so I did that. I studied and worked for several years, and I decided to come back and run for Congress in 2018, partially because of the election results of 2016. So this has been a couple of months, almost a year now, that we've been working on this.
So tell us a little bit about the 9th Congressional District. It's, I guess, southwestern Virginia. How would you describe the population, the geography, what have you, economy?
Sure. So this is an extremely large congressional district in terms of geographic size because it is so rural and the population is so dispersed. The entire district is about the size of the state of New Jersey. And believe it or not, it's actually not the biggest congressional district in Virginia. The neighboring 5th district is actually a little bigger. But we are very much a rural, mountainous Appalachian district. So that has been the nature of this region going back for decades and centuries, really. But the good thing is Appalachia has its own distinct culture and history that's not necessarily exactly the same as the rest of Virginia. So when the English and the early colonists came here, they sort of stuck to the eastern part, the central part of Virginia, where they could have their big plantations of tobacco, cotton, that sort of thing. And the Scots-Irish who were coming, who were much poorer, who were also kind of derided by the English, ended up moving farther west. And so they ended up settling in the more mountainous areas, Appalachia, like we live in here, because they were away from the English. They were away from that plantation sort of culture of a dominant class and total, very much control of government by that class of people. And so when the Civil War came, this area was actually sort of on the fence. There's a mix of pro-Union and pro-Confederate people. And of course, that's why West Virginia became a separate state, is because those counties decided they were going to break off from the state, whereas the ones in Southwest Virginia ultimately stayed. But there was a lot of that same populist, I'd say, aristocratic sentiment here. And that's really carried through over the decades because we've had Democrats in this area elected to Congress, elected in Richmond, whereas other parts of the state were red or have been red for a very long time. So although the district now, if you look at just the basic election results from 2016, went very much in favor of Trump, there has been a Democratic representative in Congress from the 9th District for 35 out of the last 50 years. So that shows you that because of that more populist culture, the Union presence we had, largely due to the coal mines, this was a Democratic area for a long time. And so that's why we definitely think this is a opportunity here in 2018 to try to revive some of that, because it's been a while now since we've had a Democrat representing us, unfortunately.
Well, and I want to talk about how we revive it. And again, we're talking with Justin Santopietro, who is running for Congress as a Democrat in Virginia's 9th District. First of all, I have a great love for the Appalachian culture, and actually have been through your district on my way to the Galax Fiddle Festival.
Oh, you've been to the Fiddlers Convention. Okay,
I have been to the Fiddlers Convention. Yeah. Maybe have passed the stage of my life where I would pitch a tent there, as I used to. But so, I love that part of the country, and I think a lot of our audience will be interested in the political history you just outlined there. But let's talk for a second about a new, how we can bring this back in 2018. Okay, so you had Democratic representation there for a long time. And by the way, for people who follow traditional music, I would point out also that Ralph Stanley, the great singer and banjo player, supported Barack Obama for president.
Right.
So it's not unprecedented by any means. But that seat has gone to, I believe, a Tea Party Republican. Yes. We've seen things change, of course, for the coal miners. How do you revive, and I have the sense that maybe some of the Democratic representatives from that district might have leaned more conservative in certain ways. Is there a new politics that can be brought, I guess I would say, to the Democratic Party in a district like yours?
Yeah, so I see the way forward for Democrats here is sort of a mix of old school, New Deal, Great Society type of federal programs, populist-based economic and fiscal programs, combined with a forward-looking vision of what Southwest Virginia can be in the future. Now, this is so important because a lot of what keeps people here sort of speculative about the future is that they don't know what their role is going to be in the 21st century economy for themselves, for their children and their grandchildren, because a lot of reason that folks live here to begin with was because we had these massive coal reserves, and the mines, especially before mechanization, hired tens of thousands of people just in Southwest Virginia alone. Now, unfortunately, that's no longer the case. Basically, for my entire lifetime, the number of people working in the coal industry has been on a pretty steady decline. And so that's, of course, and gone along with that has been a decline of unionization. So now we have very few union employees left that are still working, but we also have very few miners left. And again, because of the advent of strip mining, a mountaintop removal mining that requires much, much less physical human labor, the industry itself has changed so much, even as the demand for coal itself has also gone way down. So what I say to folks here is that we're going to work to try to keep the coal jobs that are here already, because a lot of what we can do with coal, other than just burning it for energy, is it's what we call metallurgical coal. It's a different type of mineral that's used in the production of steel. Now, steel production is an absolutely essential industry for any country to have. If you have some sort of trade war with China and Japan and they cut us off, or we need to build military equipment for some reason, or if it's just infrastructure, you always need to produce steel in your own country, and coal will have a ongoing role in that production. So the sort of government policy that would help boost U.S. steel and try to keep those other countries from sort of dumping their product in this country and driving the price down will be essential to a lot of those jobs going forward. But again, because of the increases in technology and production, there's going to be less people working in coal no matter what. So the big question is what do we do with people who have physical skills? They know how to mine, they know how to dig and blast and haul stuff. How do we put them to work doing what they already know how to do and what a lot of them like doing? So this type of work is, for a lot of people here, very much part of their family. It's part of their personal identity, that this is what their daddy did and his daddy did and his daddy did, was they would work physically, they'd work in the mines, they'd work in hauling stuff. So you can't just take people who have been doing that their whole lives and who it's part of their big identity and say, okay, we're going to sit you down and train you to be a software coder or something like that. That's just not going to work. Okay, especially a lot of these guys, 40, 50 years old, you can't just retrain them at that point in their life. So what I'm saying is, let's take these skills and use federal fiscal policy, basically, to employ these people to do things that they already know how to do and that the country desperately needs. And I see the simplest solution to that is big, big infrastructure projects. Now, I'm talking more than just roads and bridges. Obviously, there's a lot of work that needs to be done there just to bring those parts of our infrastructure back to the state they need to be in. But I'm also thinking that Southwest Virginia especially needs a massive new rail network, both in terms of high-speed passenger rail and freight rail, because we have a lot of freight that comes through here as it is, but unfortunately it's on trucks. And so that clogs up our highways. It's very dangerous. These trucks are always turning over, especially on these very steep grades and uphill, downhill that we have around here. So we could make a huge improvement in efficiency, in cost and energy efficiency, while employing thousands of people in long-term jobs. This isn't just, installing, windmills or solar panels that you do it and then it's done. As good as that is, that doesn't provide solid long-term employment. So that's what you need to pitch to folks here, I think, in a way that could bring some electoral success.
So you're talking about a passenger rail and freight rail. I get the freight rail part. Where would the passenger train be going from and to go down through North Carolina, or what's the thought there?
Well, so the main Amtrak line that connects Virginia to the Acela corridor, so to speak, currently only goes as far as Roanoke, which, as folks like to say, that's sort of where the old Virginia ends and Southwest Virginia begins. So we could easily extend that existing line through Southwest Virginia, down the 81 corridor, to Abington, to Bristol, down to Knoxville, Tennessee. There's a lot of truck freight that already does that. So at the very least, that would be something we could do. But what I see long term is having these sort of main arteries and then have much smaller, less traveled tracks that connect all these small towns and communities that we have in the district, because it's very hard to get to them as it is, even if you're driving. A lot of these roads are very curvy. You can't go more than 35, 40 miles an hour, and it can take a very long time just to get there. So if we could build this sort of expanding network over time, it would really increase the quality of life for people here and make us much more connected to the 21st century economy, which will be absolutely essential to preserve communities here in Southwest Virginia.
Well, of course, when you say you can't go faster than 35 or 40 miles an hour, there's still a part of me that says, oh, yeah, watch me.
But maybe have a really nice sports car that can handle great.
Yeah,
but,
it's in my next life, maybe. But
right.
So it sounds good. I mean, obviously, it sounds great. But I guess the next question then is, will voters down there go for it? Obviously, you think they will. But I guess I would frame the question this way, Justin Santopietro. I have to say, it bothers me a little when I hear some Democrats talking as if, let's say, white Southern voters are a kind of a homogenous group who just vote based on race or identity. It seems to me, and maybe I'm naive, but it seems to me that an agenda, a political agenda that's based on the idea of investing in infrastructure, creating jobs, revitalizing and expanding the middle class. It seems to me that that's a kind of agenda that can unify white and black voters, young and old voters, and so on, around a kind of a common agenda. And I don't know if that makes any sense to you or for your district, but what are your thoughts?
Yeah, and that's exactly what I think this could do, is bring people together who identify as left or right, whatever, because this is something that could benefit everyone economically. We know it's something that the country needs. And just in terms of the current political climate, Donald Trump campaigned endlessly about rebuilding infrastructure, and he would tell all these stories about how bad the airports were and how bad the roads were. Now, unfortunately, his administration hasn't made any effort to actually get an infrastructure bill in place. They've been focusing on destroying healthcare and destroying the tax code. But let's say the administration decides to put that on the agenda, that's something that Democrats and Republicans could actually work on, and something that would actually benefit the country as a whole, especially if there's a big wave next year. Democrats take control, that would be a signal to the Trump administration, hey, we need to do something a little more that's not as politically divisive. So that can definitely bring people together, as you said. And in terms of the homogeneity, as I was mentioning before, the history of our area, the way it was settled, and the relationships with the Civil War, we actually had a very progressive Democratic congressman back in the 60s and 70s, a guy named Pat Jennings, who actually was the only member of Congress, House or Senate, from Virginia to vote for the Voting Rights Act of 1965. Now, this is a guy from a very white, very rural area, and he supported the Voting Rights Act. And he also was the only Virginia Democrat to support the creation of Medicare, right? So these are all very, seminal, transformative pieces of legislation that were supported by a blue-collar Democrat from my area. So that sort of gives you, I think, a sense of what can be accomplished here, or at least what was.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. And unfortunately, we're going to have to leave it there. But I like that image. And I will, by the way, also to underscore your point, say that Richard Trumka, head of the AFL-CIO, has been on this show a couple of times. He was the former head of the United Mine Workers. And he points out that the United Mine Workers were very progressive and integrated way before that was the thing that liberals or Democrats did as a rule. Let's put it that way. So I like your idea. I love your idea, your vision of of progressive leadership in Virginia's 9th district. So Justin Santopietro, thanks for coming on the program, and good luck to you.
Thanks.